I can, then we can try to answer. Okay, so I can see here. Okay, that was a question for the audience. Which of these sources are more valid? Okay, we can talk about more about it. And then please close the purple box. Okay, we closed it. Then okay, thank you, thank you. We are so proud that we have many participants from all over the world. Okay, so if there's any question. Okay. So Dr. Shamshiri will start his presentation maybe after 5 minutes. So we will have a 5 minutes, maybe on track now, but just between the two presentations. It is not a real on track, just between the two presentations. So we will start after 5 minutes. And then, okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, still, if you have any question during this time, we try to answer. And okay, Dr. Shamshiri, can you hear me?
Dear Dr. Khami, hi.
Hi.
Yes.
Okay. So you can hear me. So just please, you can start your presentation after 5 minutes. Just a small contract between the two presentations.
Good. And
okay.
the duration of my session is 30 minutes or 45.
Okay, we should see the program. I think it's 45 minutes.
Good, good. It's good. Can I start sharing my screen?
Sure. Yes, we can see now your
Thank you.
presentation.
Dear all, have a good day. Dr. Shamshili will start in a couple of minutes. And if you had any question during the lecture, please try to write it in the chat box. And if you really need to ask any question, you can interrupt and ask your question, and Dr. Shamshili will answer you.
Okay, I'm ready. Do you give me permission to start?
Yes, please, Dr.
Thank
Shamshir,
you.
we are waiting for your presentation.
Okay, hi everybody. It's my pleasure to participate in this course. My topic is about a strategy of search for evidence-based information. After good presentation of Dr. Hami, I have three goals for my speaking. I want to introduce a different aspect of evidence levels and about evidence-based resources. And I want just to show you some specific resources in addition to what Dr. Hami shows you. We are here when we have some steps for evidence-based practice. The first one, formulation of the clinical question, then searching for evidence. We are now here, and in next days, we speak about appraising the evidence and applying and evaluating the practice with the evidence. So from 5 steps, we are in the second one today. For basic search, there is 5 steps. Identify the type of PICO questions, determine the level of evidence that best answers the question, because we should start from the top of the level of evidence. If it is available, we should use the best evidence. But if we have no access to the best evidence, we should go down and use another level of the evidence. The third one is select relevant databases to search. For example, Cochrane database, for example, DARE or CINAHL or other sources of information. The fourth one, use appropriate keywords according to your PICO question. And the last one, you should be familiar with the search strategy in each databases. Each databases have their own tricks for search, and you should learn, and before starting the search, you should, for example, read their manuals and their guidelines for search. For example, using mesh terms in some databases, combining search phrases by Boolean connectors such as and, or, with, or not, something else, and using the filters or limiting the search, for example, to only human studies, or limiting the search to the systematic reviews or clinical guidelines. So if you want to search in Cochrane library, you can go through this link to the help page. For example, Cochrane Library Training Hub, Cochrane Library Reference Guide, using the Cochrane name and logo, and understanding search error messages in the Cochrane library. Or if you are not familiar with the search in PubMed, you can go through this link and go to the tutorial of the PubMed. This is the learning resources, and you have access to PubMed online training. There is quick tours, tutorials, webcast and videos, classes, handouts, and a new training toolkit, trainer's toolkit, which should be advanced learning materials for you. For next step, I have a question. When you want to start searching in a database, which strategy do you prefer to start with it? A specific search or sensitive search? If you think it is specific, please type 1 in chat box. And if you think it's better to start with sensitive search, send me 2. One, two, 1, okay, 2, good. Okay, we have many 1s and many 2s. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. I think those who choose the first one, a specific search, is more than those who select sensitive search. But I prefer to start with sensitive search, and they, according to the feedback from my search, then decide to narrow my search or not. If you get few results, it's better to perform sensitive search. But when you get many results from your sensitive search, you should use some other options to narrow your search and get precise results from the database. So it's a crowded slide, but we should make a balance between precision and sensitive search to get appropriate information and do not lost information one. So there are some tips for increasing sensitivity of the search and some tips for increasing specificity. The simple one is the number of keywords you use in your search strategy. When you use a few number of keywords, your search is sensitive. But when you use many keywords, you narrow your search and you get fewer results. And it's very important for the search. Now I want to show some different aspects of the level of evidence. It's a formal level of evidence provided by Oxford Center of EBM, or Evidence-based Medicine, which is put after each recommendation, for example, in the guidelines, or is provided to show the level of evidence for each area of the evidence-based dentistry. I mean therapy, I mean prevention, I mean prognosis, etiology, and harms or hazard. 1A, 1B, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is the pyramid of level of evidence. As you know, the base of the pyramid is for expert opinion or background information. Then it is for case control studies, for cross-sectional studies, and case series and case reports. One level after this is the cohort studies. And as you know, the cohort studies are the most valid observational study. After observational studies, we have randomized control trials. At the right, you see, it's noted that these level of evidence are unfiltered information. They are unfiltered information. Filtering here means that they are not critically appraised. For example, when you search in the PubMed, you have access to original articles or systematic reviews, but the PubMed did not publish critical appraised articles. So there are some sources that are filtered because they reviewed all the articles or informations and critically appraised and provide valid informations for your practice. For example, critically appraised individual articles that we name them article synopsis, or critically appraised topic that we say evidence synthesis, such as systematic reviews and meta-analysis that you see at the top. So we have filtered and unfiltered information in the databases. And it's obvious when I want to start for searching for answers to my PICO question, it's better to start from filtered information because they are critically appraised, and you get rid of appraising the information in these databases. Another pyramid. At the base of the pyramid are studies. It means original journal articles related to case series, case report, case control, then cohort, and RCTs. Okay, the top level of evidence in the bottom of this pyramid is related to the randomized controlled clinical trials. After that is synopsis of studies that is provided by evidence-based journal abstracts, for example. After synopsis of studies, we have synthesis. We have synthesis. It means that the researcher perform a secondary study by primary studies. So in a secondary study, such as systematic review, the researcher perform a comprehensive search to gather all information in the original studies and put them together with, for example, a meta-analysis and synthesis an evidence. After synthesis, we have synopsis of synthesis, which is also provided in some different evidence-based journal abstracts. And then after we have summaries. Summaries are related to clinical practice guidelines or some specific textbooks named evidence-based textbooks. And at the top of this pyramid, we have some tools or devices or systems which are at the practitioner. There are some devices that you put the information of the patients, and the program or the system or the device suggests some decisions for good clinical practice. And here, as these systems are not widely used, it's better to start for search with summaries. So if you have some systems or tools in your practice, start with that. But otherwise, you should start with the summaries, which is mainly the clinical practice guidelines. And then after, if you can't find the information in summaries, continue down the pyramid. And it's obviously the strength of the evidence decrease when you go further down the pyramid until the expert opinion. Now, for advanced search, there is a flow diagram to show this step-by-step going to search for your best answer. I zoom to first step. At the top, you should develop your clinical question. Based on your clinical question, we should start with clinical practice guidelines, which you can find in some sources. It's better to start with your national sources. For example, it may be provided by the Ministry of Health in your country, or the Medical or Dental Council, or in professional society, for example, or association, it's better to use your keywords to search for clinical guidelines in your national resources. If you can't find any national resources, then it's better to go to other guideline resources to find the relevant answer of the question. And maybe if you have no access to the guidelines, the next step is going through ACPs or some resources that is almost close to the summaries that I mentioned. The next step, here is some of the resources for clinical guidelines. For example, Australian Clinical Practice Guideline Portal, which is related to National Health and Medical Research Council, Cancer Council Australia, for example, the National Guideline Clearinghouse, which is related to the US, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, which we name NICE, it's related to UK, or Scottish Intercollegiate Guidelines Network, we name SIGN, which is related to Scotland or UK again. I want to focus on national resources, for example, guidelines. As Dr. Hami mentioned, providing or making a clinical practice guideline is very complex, and the process is very sophisticated because when a group try to provide a clinical guideline, they should be aware about at least two things. One thing is the effectiveness of the intervention that they recommend. And the second, it should be customized to their nation or population. So when you find your answer in a national guideline, you can rely that is adopted and it's compatible with health policies in your country. It's compatible with insurance in your country. It's compatible with rules and regulations. They think about the cost and benefits of the intervention in the population. They think about availability and accessibility of the intervention in the country, acceptability of the intervention by the patients, and cultural values and many other factors that can affect the recommendation. So always start with national resources. The second step, if you can't find any answer in the summaries and guidelines, we should go through filtered information. For example, we should find systematic reviews, but it's better to find those systematic reviews that are appraised by a valid databases. For example, I prefer to start with Cochrane Library. Then after non-Cochrane databases such as DARE or JBI databases, which are not as valid as Cochrane, but is good. The next step is those information that may be provided by ACP Journal Club and some other similar databases. And the last one, if you didn't find a filtered information, there is no way to go through unfiltered information. And now you should have the ability to appraise the information here more than previous steps. And you may go through Medline or PubMed, Ovid, Scopus, Web of Science, and other databases that Dr. Khamis said. And as you see here, findings in this step should be critically appraised, and you should be a lucky person to get a valuable answer to your question in this step. But when you can't find any clinical guideline, if you can't find a systematic review, and you, for example, find your answer in a cohort study, the cohort study here is your best available evidence, and you should follow the recommendation that's rise from the cohort study, for example. Now, my second question, what are the benefits and risks of using antibiotics as well as cleaning by dental care professional to treat gum disease? If you find no relevant clinical practice guideline, which database should be considered to get best available evidence? So what's your answer? Cochrane Library, send 1, or Medline or PubMed, send 2. Carry on. Thank you. I think why 2? Yes, good. Almost all the answers are correct. As I mentioned, Cochrane Library is a valid database which index protocol of systematic reviews and only almost index those systematic reviews and meta-analysis that are included only randomized clinical trials, and they truly appraise both the protocol and the report of the study, and it's a valid database. Thank you for your answers. Thank you. Now, I want to show some databases interface. For example, this is the source of guidelines. This is an official website for guidelines in the US. You can find guidelines both for medical questions and dental questions. This is the interface of NICE, which is related to UK. Here is the branch of oral health of Cochrane Library, as Dr. Khami mentioned. And this is TRIP, Turning Research into Practice database. It's almost a search engine, but it's a very friendly database. And for search items, if you click on Pico, you can, the site guide you to put the keywords in appropriate boxes. For example, for population, it's guide you the type of patient, for example, diabetics patient. For intervention, any intervention, for example, treatment or diagnostic test. For comparison, it asks about comparing your intervention with another treatment or therapy. And for outcome also ask you to put, for example, some keywords such as reduce mortality or other indices. If you fill all of the boxes, you get a specific search strategy. It means that you precise your search. But if you, for example, start with 2 keywords only, you have a sensitive search strategy. As I mentioned before, I prefer to start with few keywords and get sense with adding or removing the keywords or putting, for example, a synonym according to the guideline of the site for searching, and get and evaluate their feedbacks of the web page or database to improve my next search strategy. Okay, here in an example, I put 3 keywords: caries, fluoride, and toothpaste, and it provides 52 results. And it's very interesting at the right side of my slide that below each evidence, you can see the pyramid of evidence for that result. For example, the first one review, which is not finished.
Your voice is interrupting.
Dr. Shamshiri, we cannot hear. We don't have your voice. Dr. Shamshiri, maybe Dr. Shamshiri is now disconnected. Okay, so yes, it seems that I try to call. Dr. Shamshiri, your microphone is muted.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Okay.
My internet connection was disconnected. Yeah. Hello again.
Okay, thanks.
So,
Hello.
I think my connection interrupted on the interface of trip. Am I right?
I think one slide after that, when you were talking about the pyramids.
Yeah, good.
Yes. Yeah. Here.
Here. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So here, in the trip database, they provide some pyramids to show you the level of evidence of the results. Here is the dental elf. The dental elf also provides some systematic reviews and trials and guidelines for different medical and also dental diseases. As you see at the right, for diabetes, for education, for stroke, for social, for musculoskeletal, for mental and lifestyle, and so on. They provided some informative evidences. Here is one of them. For example, antiplaque agents in toothpaste. Are they helpful in managing gingivitis? There are some other databases for evidence-based healthcare and information technologies, and they provide some networks of experts in different health aspects. I mean here, Epistemonikos, which is a Greek word, means what is worth knowing, and is provided and funded by the same name organization. And if you, for example, search for dental pain, they provide some systematic reviews or primary studies or some clinical guidelines. As you see at the left of the slide, the broad synthesis in this site means that they are not classified yet, these 20 sources, as systematic review or guidelines or others, but other information are classified. And also you can use the filters for the time of publication, for example, last year or some other intervals. Okay. And another source is some search or some search 2. Also, it's focused on intervention and diagnosis, as you see under the search box. And you can also limit your search by age in adults or pediatrics. And you can only limit your search to the human information. Also, you can restrict your search to English or those information with abstracts. Maximum iterations 5 or 6. You can select 6 to only get information from high impact journals, or if there are a few results, you can select 5 to get more information from your search, but not as valid as when you select 6. And also you can limit the number of results you can see, and so on. Here's some information about the sum search, and here is the interface of one search. The search is classified to original studies, systematic reviews, and guidelines. And as you see, for example, in this search, I got 2 results here, and we can go through them to get our answer to the PICO question. Okay, and this is the last question from my speaking. I would be appreciated if you send your feedback to my lecture. And if you have questions, also type your question, or thank you very much. Or open your microphone and ask me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Shamshiri, for your
You're welcome.
nice and informative presentation. And we can see lots of tools in the chat box showing that the presentation can improve the maybe knowledge and skills of our audience.
Thank you.
And we have some two, which means that the higher level of evidence showing that you have been successful in your presentation. Thank you very much. So, okay, now we are here at the end of presentation by Dr. Shamshiri. Again, if there's any question, please write down in the chat box, and then I can check the chat box. Okay, so Dr. Shamshiri, we have a question here.
Yeah, about the synopsis of synthesis.
Yes.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's a good question. I can repeat my speaking about the synopsis of synthesis. As you know, there are a lot of researchers that are interested to perform systematic reviews and meta-analysis. It's very prestigious for them to publish such studies. But most of them, as original articles, are not valid. Only those systematic reviews that published in valid journals are peer-reviewed, and most of them are not peer-reviewed. And if you want to use them, you should have a high proficiency in critical appraising the systematic reviews. So we should rely on those databases that themselves appraise the systematic reviews and index the valid systematic reviews in their databases. So, for example, as Dr. Khambi showed us, that in oral health Cochrane library, only about 200 systematic reviews are provided. It doesn't mean that only 200 systematic reviews are performed in dentistry all over the world. It's very huge information and systematic reviews in the dental science. But according to the standards of the Cochrane library, there is only 200 registered systematic reviews with randomized clinical trials. So after you search in the clinical guidelines, the next step is to search systematic reviews in the valid databases that they provide a synopsis of synthesis. The synopsis of synthesis means those systematic reviews that are critically appraised and find that they are appropriate to index or be available to answer your PICO questions. Yeah. Just this.
Thank you very much for your answer. So, okay, we can just see if there is any other question of your presentation. Okay, so it seems that at present there's no other question, but still there are space for your question regarding any of the topics that was covered by me or Dr. Shamsuri during my next presentation, during the on-track time, and at the end of the session, at the end of the 2-day session. So please don't hesitate to ask your questions. So there are another question: what are the minimum number of databases required to do a systematic review? A good question, I think.
Okay, I think performing systematic reviews is not the goal of this course. We are here for evidence-based dentistry. We are users of the research results. So there is no need to perform a systematic review to answer my own PICO question, because the patient sits on the chair and I should find quickly an answer to the question. So we should have ability and expertise for finding the answer of the PICO question, not performing systematic review. I think it's enough for this question.
Okay, maybe sometimes we can have another workshop or program on how to do a systematic review, and then maybe at that time we can talk more about this. Okay, so I think after 2 presentations, now it is time for just a small break for 10 to 15 minutes. Yes, and then during this break time, we can see some clips. So we will be back after 15 minutes to continue with the 2 days program. During this break time, again, if you have any comment or question, please write down in the chat box. Thank you very much. We will be back within 15 minutes.